Hello and welcome to another video review. This is Killing Floor for PC and Mac. This is a first-person shooter billed as survival horror that was actually originally an Unreal Tournament 2004 mod that eventually they created a full retail release of in 2009. And it's interesting because they've continued to support it ever since. In fact, around the holidays of each year, they will actually release different content packs that will that are free downloads for everybody who already owns the game, and since it's through Steam, then it automatically downloads it and you have access to all the content. But it'll add in new things like achievements and weapons, and it'll reskin the monsters for a time. And so they've continued to really support this game, and they really do seem to get behind it. And it is the same people who made Red Orchestra, so you can expect that same kind of level of quality and almost realism in this particular title. And the question becomes there, though, is it really all that great? Well, in the visuals, it's actually really impressive. This is Unreal Engine 2.5. It's kind of hard to notice that in a lot of cases, though, because they just packed so much detail into this game, both environment-wise, character modeling and everything-wise. Really tons of detail into this game, and it's really impressive to see that. Textures are surprisingly high-res, animations are surprisingly fluid, and look surprisingly realistic to some degree. And that's kind of the theme they were going for with some of this stuff. And the monsters are suitably gruesome, and definitely, they really factor into that fact that this is supposed to be survival horror and not just like a zombie game, because it does come across as just a zombie game. And except when you actually get into the game, you see that there's lots of different types of enemies and such, and each of them is very varied. Each of them has their own specific styling and everything that really contributes to a very unique visual look to the entire game. As for the sound design, it's interesting. The music is a lot of really weird, like black metal, I guess is the way you describe it. I don't really know, maybe synth metal or something like that. I don't really like the soundtrack, to be honest with you. It just seems really intrusive and loud and obnoxious. Now, I know a lot of people would like that kind of thing, but I don't. It doesn't appeal to my ears at all. There are a few good tracks in this game, though. And then you have the voice acting, which is, British accents, nothing majorly wrong with it. I mean, I believe Tripwire is British. But, it doesn't really sound all that well done. It just seems like somebody's kind of reading a script, or maybe rehearsing for something, they're not really actually acting. And it has that kind of amateur feel to it, because there's a lot of instances where you'd think that the person would be like freaking out or something, and they're not. They're just like stone face or something like that. And they're making quips and everything, and so it's kind of weird, and it's a stark contrast to the rest of the game. Then, of course, there's the sound effects themselves, which are actually really, really good. All of the guns are nice and beefy. Really fit well, and if you're using certain weapons that are more powerful, then they actually sound more powerful, which is pretty awesome, because there's a lot of pea shooter kind of things going on in the gaming industry right now. And so it's nice to see that they actually do care about creating this really great atmosphere, as well as the having these really nice beefy sound effects. Because their environmental stuff is also quite good as well. But then we come to the most important part of this, and that is the gameplay, because the storyline is literally just a setup for the multiplayer. Basically, a bunch of military cloning experiments in England go horribly wrong, and you're part of one of the military teams sent in to deal with the problem and get rid of all the failed experiments. And what ensues is various waves of enemies will basically just come after you, and you have to survive as long as possible in order to manage to defeat all of the waves. So this is basically, that's why they say it's a survival game. They say it's survival horror, though, and it's not really horrific. It's just some of the enemies are kind of creepy to look at, but other than that, the game really isn't scary. I really wouldn't call it horror. I'd call it horror-themed, but not specifically horror. And co-op, you can play with up to 6 players in total, so basically you and 5 other people. to fight off all of these waves of specimens. And actually, as you get more people playing, the more specimens will come after you. And that presents itself as a little bit of a problem because the game gets more and more difficult as it goes along anyway. So when you have even more enemies coming after you, that makes it just, it gets exponentially more difficult, basically. That said, difficulty is not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of zombie games are, like, say, if you say Left 4 Dead, for instance, it can be really easy if you know what you're doing. Whereas Killing Floor, even if you know what you're doing, it is not easy, because they designed it specifically to be fairly difficult. As you get more equipment, you get weighed down more, and that means you move slower, which is kind of a problem if you're trying to run away from a bunch of zombies. As you go through the game, you will get money and by killing all of these specimens, and you will be able to spend that money on upgrades like better weapons, more ammo, body armor, that sort of thing, at the trader. Now, the problem here is that you get more money for blasting more specimens. So you'll probably get one or two people if you're playing with just random people online. You'll probably get a couple of people that are either really good at this game or just really know how to exploit it or something. And so they'll get a massive amount of money and hoard it all to themselves. Whereas the rest of the people will sit there and be stuck with their little 9mm pistols because they got like 3 pounds. Because the money in the game is pounds, of course. So you'll run into a lot of problems with that if you just go random online. So play with your buddies, and you'll find that in a lot of cases you will really end up working as a team. And you kind of have to, because they designed this game around a persistent perk system, which I really call it more of a class system, because that's what it really is. Wherein you get access to several different perks. Each of these is a specialized thing, like, say, Commando is good at mid and close range combat, Sharpshooter is good at long range combat, Medics, they also have stuff like an Engineer, and so on and so forth. And it's pretty cool to actually see all these different classes, which are surprisingly well balanced out, because it means you can really specialize in one class, and because as you use that particular perk, it will upgrade through different challenges and such. Like, say you get enough kills and such, and you'll level up your perk. And as you level it up, you get different bonuses, and the bonuses improve over time. There is a problem with this, though. Because if you get into a game and everybody's playing as like a Commando or a Sharpshooter or something like that, then it's like, okay, well, somebody needs to be a Medic. Well, if they don't have the Medic perk leveled up enough, then they're going to run into a lot of problems. Because that means that they're really not that great at healing people, and so on and so forth. That sort of thing happens all the time. And that's a pretty major problem, especially considering how long it takes to level up your perks. It is surprisingly slow. The leveling up system takes quite a long time to actually get working. So if you're, like, say, a Berserker, where your entire perk is around melee combat, then you're not going to level that up very quickly unless you get like a really good melee weapon and just go berserk on things. And some of the weapons are a little bit under or overpowered, depending on what you think of them. Like, the melee weapons seem a little bit underpowered, because it takes so many hits to bring stuff down in a lot of cases. And in the katana's case, you'll be swinging and you have to figure out the timing on it because it's so weird. Whereas the guns themselves, they range from powerful to incredibly pathetic. And, like, say you get the AA-12 shotgun, it's pretty much the ultimate weapon in the entire game. Fully automatic shotgun, crazy damage and all that. But even by the end game, it's pretty underpowered. because by that time everything has scaled up to be insanely hard to kill, and you're fighting the really tough enemies. And there's a lot of enemy variety in this game. You start out with really simple, like just kind of the shuffling zombie kind of thing, and then eventually it gets to things with guns mounted on their arms and chainsaw things and all sorts of crazy things. And you get these enemies do add a lot of variety to the game and make it much more difficult than just blasting hordes of zombies, for instance. But at the same time, they can be really frustrating because there are some of these enemies that are really hard to bring down. And as a result, even working as a team, you're going to have a lot of moments where people die. And that's kind of a problem because when you respawn the next wave, you have nothing. You literally are back to your 9mm pistol and your knife, and that's it. Which is really bad if you don't have any money. Because then you'll go through the game and you'll be like having to mooch off of everybody else, and that's kind of a problem. But there is a lot of stuff in this game to actually do. I mean, there aren't that many weapons, but they're fairly decently balanced. There are about 175 or so Steam achievements for this game, so it's pretty ridiculous about that. And they are continually updating it, too. Around the holidays, they tend to release big content updates, like they did right now, that will give you tons and tons and tons of stuff just to fiddle with, and they'll change how the enemies look and give you new maps and all that. And of course there's also the fact that there's an SDK for it, Windows only though, where you can make your own maps and such. So there's actually quite a bit of replay value into this if you're into this sort of thing. I'm not really a big fan of this type of thing. Yet still, I do have fun playing Killing Floor if I'm playing it with my friends. If I'm playing it solo, it's really not that great. But the problem I have with playing with my friends is that it's really, really laggy. Because it's basically peer-to-peer. So, that becomes a pretty big problem. But other than that, there's really nothing horribly wrong with Killing Floor. It's just I'm not a particular fan of the genre. So overall, I'd say Killing Floor is a great thing if you're just bored with stuff like, say, Left 4 Dead, where it's really, there's no variety whatsoever, it's not very difficult, that sort of thing. And you really want to go with something that's kind of almost realistic, because there's all sorts of different things about that in there. More varied, and there's a lot of more specialization in there. And it's continually updated. So, I mean, Killing Floor is good for that sort of thing, but at the same time, it really will not convince you if you're not really a fan of this particular subgenre of FPS. But still, it's pretty solid. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching.